Hello, and welcome back to another interview from White Album 2. So today's interview that we're going to be reading over is with Naoya Shimokawa. Naoya Shimokawa is the president of Aquaplus, which obviously is a pretty big deal when it comes to WA2. So, this one is celebrating the White Album 2 anime broadcast. Interview with Naoya Shimokawa. Celebrating the broadcast of White Album 2 anime series. Special interview with Naoya Shimokawa. Continuing from our interview with Nena Uehara-san, we present a special interview with President and CEO of Aquaplus and founder of FIX Records, Naoya Shimokawa. Which, having a record company alongside being a game producer, CEO, works really well together, and that's probably why White Album 2 has like 20 different CDs. Shimokawa-san, you founded FIX Records in 1999. Please give us the details regarding how you started up this game music label. Back then, Shoujo games for the PC still didn't have their own theme songs, so the discussion arose of starting to write theme songs for them. At the same time, I thought there might be people who would want to own recordings of those songs on CD. So I started a label in order to market these CDs and went with the flow of record distribution. It was a fairly simple process. Spoken like a true CEO. He's like, yeah, not a big deal. I just made a record company because I thought of it one day. That's all. What really caught my attention then was that, for example, you were very quick to bring in SACDs. Now, SACDs, I haven't actually seen them outside of Japan. You don't need a special disc player to play them in regular quality, but if you have an SACD player, it brings out more of the music. It's a more detailed, better sound quality type of CD player. So producing SACDs is a bit more expensive. And you would always seemed to be extraordinarily sharp-eared when it came to sound quality. Have you always had that sort of fixation on sound? I believed that in the future, as data capacity grew, an age would come when the audio of extraordinarily high quality was sought after. I wanted to leave behind an audio source that would still be of use in a time when a high-quality listening environment had become the norm. Kind of like the people who jumped on DVDs very early on, as opposed to VHS. I also felt that as the sound we hear during recording changes in the process of mastering, I wanted to give listeners the sound that we ourselves had approved. In other words, you wanted to deliver something that was as true as possible to the sound you could see in the beginning. I'm a fan of high-end audio myself. So I had the sense that if we wanted the songs we made to become an audio source, good sound was best. It's only natural that audiophiles want a high-quality sound source. But I also think that good sound is only really something you can understand if you're an audiophile. Okay, I don't think I'm an audiophile. I've listened to some FLAC type music, but other than that, nah. I don't have an SACD player, for example. I have the White Album 2 SACDs, but I've never gone out of my way to buy the CD player. I think they sound really good, but then again, I'm not an audiophile. And by the way, what type of music did you originally listen to? I loved the sort of thing that was popular at the time, including J-pop. Of course, I also liked game music, so I really gave myself to Yuzo Koshiro-san's tracks. I just didn't want to be dyed too deeply in one color, so as a result, I listened to a bit of everything. Ooh, dyed too deeply in one color. I really like that phrase. When you produce music with vocals, do you do so with those sorts of 90s artists in mind? The music that I make myself is very much in an early 90s vein, but as a company, we work in a way that best fits the production at hand, which makes sense. With White Album, in 2 even more than in 1, we're aware of a certain level of youthfulness, so we mixed in some more metropolitan components. On the whole, the vocal tracks in White Album 2 take their essence from the late 80s and early 90s. Because they do, they sound like older, cheesy love songs, even though they still sound trendy today. I believe that fashions and trends move in a spiral. You may circle around to the same point, but in a more evolved form, at a different height. To draw from the tastes of an era that teens and young 20-somethings aren't familiar with, bring that forward into a more modern sound, and create something that sounds somehow nostalgic but not outdated, is a challenge point for me. I don't pound that much current feeling into it either, so I know it doesn't exactly feel new. On the other hand, for people between 30 and 40, it's easy to hit a perfect strike with the nostalgia. The people in the middle, in their late 20s, might feel a subtle sense of age in it. It's interesting talking about the vibe they were going for with the music. Because I find myself not thinking about it so much. Like, oh, what era is this from? What vibe do I get? I mean, yeah, especially with White Album, specifically, I'm like, oh, wow, this sounds like a really old Japanese love song. But with most of the other music on White Album, too, I never really thought about it being late 80s, early 90s kind of thing. But it could be because I didn't grow up in Japan, so I don't have the nostalgia for older Japanese music, as opposed to if it were written in English, maybe I would. I don't know. I see. Next, I'd like to ask about White Album 2. Was it after you confirmed the content of the story that you decided to work in the musical essence you talked about? At the planning meeting, I had a talk with Fumiaki Maruta-san, who is the scriptwriter, about the scene and setting. It started with the premise of high schoolers saying, let's start a band. So the sound design needed to tend in a pop direction, with attention to modernity? Never read that before. And the youthfulness I mentioned. The piano in White Album really leaves an impression. And I felt a very strong sense of winter imagery from that. So I used the piano as my bass. Maruta-san left the songs up to me, so I was free to attach my own images to sound as I saw fit. The winter image really jumps out right from the start of White Album 2. And I think it may partly be because of the unusually strong impact made by the use of piano in the background music. I mean, yeah, you got the piano in the background, you got the falling snow at the airport. Right from the get-go, you're like, oh, this is a wintry type of scene. From the standpoint of the fans, the sound already has an image attached to it from the original game. For original fans, a lot of people joined at the point of White Album 2. So naturally, the presence alone of tracks that they were familiar with would make the scenes into something special. On the other hand, for people who don't know the original, the tracks are completely new. So I wondered whether I should use original songs according purely to image. While I was thinking about how to make that distinction, I didn't want people thinking, wait, what's this track? Or saying, you're not using the same ones? The conclusion I reached was that if I wanted people to feel like it worked well in the anime, the only way was to put forth something that captured the full impact of image, story, and music being linked together. I see. I don't know. I'm not sure that I see. But he doesn't want new fans to feel left out. He doesn't want old fans to be enraged. And that's a delicate line to try to balance, I think, is to sum it up. And so, my eye was on how to make the original songs into something of truly fine quality. White Album 2 is an anime that depicts a human drama. So I decided to go after it almost entirely acoustically, to garnish that human drama by embracing something that was sort of represented the variations and instabilities of humanity, maybe. I love acoustic versions, especially if it's a song that wasn't originally acoustic and then it pops up in acoustic. I'm like, oh, my heart, no. And White Album 2 does that very well. My goal was less to create tracks on their own that would make people go, this is amazing, and more to create a part of a whole that would have a great impact altogether. Something that would give life to the anime. My hope is that people who watch it all the way to the end will find that the music sticks in their heads. So, with that part included, I added music to the absolute fullest extent that the anime would allow. I believe that one's sense of hearing latches on especially hard when attention is paid to what will move the emotions of the viewers. So I worked to create something that would lead them along in an almost pushy way. I think that's perfectly fitting because when you're playing through White Album 2 the game and a certain song comes on, oh god, like it's all over. You're already crying. They did a very good job with that in the anime and the game. It's just the whole thing flowed really well. So, did you rearrange and re-record the vocal tracks sung by Reina Uehara-san to have the same themes as the background music? Yes. I used a largely acoustic band while deliberately adding in a small bit of power in the sound design. White Album 2 is a story with particularly dramatic ups and downs in its composition. But as an anime, it has the same opening theme every week. So I boosted the power a little to make a more neutral sound, something that would work for both happy intervals and sad intervals. Which is really important because if you just saw a super, super sad episode and then immediately watched the next one, right, in the case of like the Blu-rays, it's kind of weird if you jump right back into a super happy song. So, even the endings too, the ending themes as well. This might sound like the opposite of what I've been talking about, but I actually did my utmost to make sure the opening theme didn't feel too changed. Though, if you listen and compare the two, they do feel pretty completely different. Among the other vocal tracks, Setsuna sings a cover of Miyuki Nakajima-san's Akujo, Within the Snow. With the inclusion of that, together with a world in which White Album was a hit 10 years before, you really get the sense of a fully realized music history for the whole work. I guess you could call it a sort of game for me as a musician, trying to inlay the setting with something novel and interesting. But sound design has a meaning beyond that. So it should be to choose, something that would be okay for Setsuna to sing without throwing off the world of the anime. So why does Setsuna know Akujo? In my mind, it's a song that Setsuna's father used to listen to. So she learned it herself, and now it's one of her specialty songs. Again, that's just my personal take on it, rather than anything officially established by Maruto-san. It's like covering himself there, like, just to let you know, I'm just making this up. This is my headcanon. I could see it, though. Setsuna would definitely end up listening to music her parents listened to, because they're that type of family. There's music laid out everywhere, including the background music. So looking at this as a listening anime brings its own sort of enjoyment. Ooh, a listening anime. I always called it like background anime. Like if I'm trying to work or do something or sew and I want something on the background, I like having an anime like this. I agree. In large part because the voice actors did such incredibly fine work. Even the use of the spaces in between, the breath used for each expression is constructed extremely carefully. So I believe this anime will give the viewers a powerful sense of total balance. I feel like there are a lot of different ways one can listen to the musical world you've worked with, Shimokawa-san, as an anime or as a concert. To me, the most important thing is to think of things I wish I'd done and then implement them. Maruto-san has said something similar before. It's important to be your own biggest fan, isn't it? Ooh, an interesting thought coming from a creator. Maruto-san absolutely does this. He throws his own personal tastes into everything. If you look at it not as a creator, but as a user, and create the sort of thing you would want, the sort of thing that makes you cry or moves you, then I think the finished product will naturally come out well. Which, as we know, they did a very good job of. As a final question, what is your personal reaction to the execution of the anime version at this point in time, Shimokawa-san? This may sound like I'm singing my own praises, but at this point, I think it's truly excellent. The music, the images, and the voice actors have all come together well. And the quality of the scenario itself goes without saying. To me, it has achieved a great degree of perfection. My criterion for buying software has always been whether or not the quality it merits is present. I believe it is present in this work. Aww, he's happy and proud of what his company has produced, and I think that is wonderful. Profile. Naoya Shimokawa is the president and CEO of the game company Aquaplus, as well as the founder of the music label FIX Records. In addition to having worked on a number of hit productions, including the Two Heart and White Album series, he also acts as composer and producer for the music in said works, as well as for artists such as Suwara and Rena Uehara, which is a pretty broad, specialty, a pretty broad range of specialties is what I mean. Being a music producer is one thing. Being the CEO of a game company is another. He does both. That's impressive. And I feel like that's why White Album 2 became kind of the best of both worlds, is because they were able to bring all of this expertise into one game, specifically a very music-focused game. So, interesting to get to know the CEO. So, thank you so much for joining me on this White Album 2 interview, and I'll be back with more White Album 2 interviews in the future. So until then, hope you take care. See you!